We now enter into the 5-minute questioning portion of our hearing today. Chair recognizes Ms. Foxx for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Pemberton, just this Saturday we saw one of Senator Rand Paul's staffers attacked and stabbed multiple times in Northeast D.C. by a man who was released from prison just the previous day. According to Police Chief Robert Conti, on average, any given homicide suspect in D.C. has already been arrested 11 times before he or she actually commits homicide. Why is D.C. allowing violent criminals to remain on the streets for so long? And I'd like a fairly concise answer, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. Most of the answer for that is that the criminal penalties that exist within our criminal justice system are incredibly weak. And that's due a lot to provisions passed by D.C. Council. There's the Youth Rehabilitation Act, there's the Incarceration Reduction Act, there's the Public Safety and Justice Act. There's a number of provisions that have been put in place that reduce sentencing guidelines for D.C. Superior Court.
So to keep violent offenders from returning to the street, the D.C. Council needs to tighten up on the penalties. Is that correct?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Thank you. Again, for you, Mr. Pemberton, as part of Vision Zero in D.C., we're seeing new bike lanes, traffic calming measures such as lane closures, and new medians being constructed across the city. What impact do these measures have on police response times?
Well, particularly in main thoroughfares, when bike lanes are introduced, it does impede police response times because it makes it much more difficult for emergency vehicles to get through those areas.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Mendelson, we all know schools were shut down for long periods during the COVID pandemic, which has created tremendous learning losses, drops in test scores, and contributed to the city's low graduation rates. Do you see a link between these school closures and the high truancy rate that still linger in D.C.? And I just need a yes or no.
It's difficult to just give a yes or no. There is some link. But as we're coming out, I mean, our school system, our schools closed and we had virtual learning as did jurisdictions around the country. Yeah. And so we're coming back from that.
Well, as I'm sure you know, nearly half of these students qualified as chronically absent during 2022, a rate which has persisted since the COVID school shutdowns began in 2020. During this time, we saw an increase in juvenile crime, especially carjackings. Do you see a link between the high truancy rates and increased juvenile crime?
No, I don't.
DC? You don't?
I do not see a link there.
What is the D.C. Council doing to address the high truancy rates and rising juvenile crime in D.C. if you don't see a link?
As the chair of the committee of the whole, I have had a number of hearings on attendance and truancy, and I'm very concerned about the attendance rate. But let me be clear, the accurate measure of the quality of our educational system is in the test scores, like the National Education Assessment Score, NAEP, and we see improvement. Like all jurisdictions, the scores went down during the pandemic, but they've been coming back up. Yes, attendance is a concern, but in terms of educational outcomes, we are seeing some improvement.
Thank you. Mr. Pemberton, common sense says reducing consequences for crime invites even more crime. This not only harms residents of increasingly lawless communities, but businesses and their customers. Are you concerned that increased crime will push businesses out of D.C.?
Absolutely. There's dozens of restaurants and other commercial establishments that have closed in the past few years, and I think many of them have left due to crime.
Are you concerned that an increase in crime will discourage people from moving to D.C. and perhaps push those people instead to the suburbs of Maryland and Virginia, or even out of the metro area completely?
Yes, what we hear from citizens quite often is that they're looking to move out of the city because of the crime rates.
Well, I want to say that even a staffer of mine kept hearing gunshots around their house, and a week ago sold their house and moved out to Maryland. This is a very, very real issue. So one more question. Given these negative economics and social consequences, why do you think D.C. City Council has adopted such a soft on crime stance?
Well, I think part of it is because they've always had this lean towards defendant-friendly policies, but frankly, over the past few years, I think they've been chasing headlines and trying to jump on the bandwagon of anti-police rhetoric that's happening all over the country.
Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes